Hi everyone, Julia here from The Art of Creating, and I have a quick video for you again today. This one I am painting a galaxy in watercolor. First thing is I've grabbed a small piece of paper. It was approximately 3.5 by 5.5 inches, and I've taped it down to a clear block and carefully wetted the whole area a few times and waited for the water to soak in, just to provide me with a nice wet surface to work on. Now I'm starting to add my colors, and I was using a reference photo for this image and for this painting, and I'm just adding the colors that I see in the reference. So I've started with some yellows and started adding some oranges to it, and then some red. There was also a bit of green, blue and purple, and then I'm covering the other areas with very dark purple as well. And then I'm going to dry it and then add another color. So with the galaxies, you kind of want to make it look like there's a light shining through in between all the darkness of the galaxy, of all that space. And you kind of want to add your colors, let them mix a little bit, and then sort of cover majority of it with a really dark color, with a really dark mix, so that it looks like there is a light peeking out from underneath. So I'm just adding my blues, starting with a bit of a lighter blue and adding some darker blue and some purples in as well in that area. And now I'm starting to add really dark ones. So that was some indigo mixed with Payne's Grey. And I'm just adding those in all of the other areas, just leaving a little bit of a gap to give my colors a bit of room to spread out and mix together. You just got to be very careful with the colors that you're putting in on your paper, just keeping in mind that certain colors when mixed together create nice colors and other colors will create mud. So where you have, for example, green, you don't want it to mix with red, as it will start giving you more neutral earthy tones, or in other words mud. But if you want to have those colors quite vivid, you need to leave a bit of a room in between so that those colors that you don't want to mix don't mix together. So colors like yellow and orange or yellow and red are fine together. Blue and green or reds and purples are fine, but keep green away from red if you don't want them to mix. And then I'm sort of adding more and more color. I'm using a bit of a tapping motion with my brush, as I don't want a flat wash of color. I want it to be a little bit random, and then I want it to spread out a little bit and then start mixing with the other colors. So as I'm adding more and more paint, which means I'm also adding more water onto the page, and I'm doing this all fairly quickly so that my paper hasn't really had any time to dry, I'm actually ending up with quite a lot of water on my paper. So at this point my colors are starting to kind of be a bit uncontrollable and bleeding into each other too much and mixing in the areas where I don't want them to mix. Like I want certain areas of yellow and blue to sort of stay put, but as I'm adding more and more color, and then darker colors with more pigment starts dominating and spreading out into the other colors, into the colors that I've put down earlier, they are starting to overtake. And at the point where it looks like it's a little bit too uncontrollable, I'm going to have to dry it and then do another layer. Also keeping in mind that once your paint dries, it will become a lot lighter as well. So once it dries, you need to reassess your colors again and either make adjustments or move the colors or add a bit more darker color, because you do want those really nice darks when you're painting a galaxy. This paper is fairly thin, which is why the water sort of starts pulling up a little bit as I continue to add my colors. So if it was a thicker paper, I could have gone maybe a little bit longer, but in this case I was experimenting with the technique I've seen someone use where instead of stretching your paper, you actually wet the paper and then place it onto like an acrylic block or a glass or perspex or something like that, where you it kind of creates a suction and it kind of sticks to the surface, and that provides you with a stretched paper that you can paint on, and that prevents it from buckling. So I was kind of experimenting with that technique that I saw, and that's why I've grabbed this little piece of paper to try and experiment and see how that works. So it requires more experimentation and trying, so I will update you on that once I've had a bit more practice and let you know the best way I found that this would actually work. And at this point, as I keep adding colors, I have found that my really dark mix was starting to overtake too much, and I was losing those really bright light colors like the yellows and the greens. So I've decided to add a little bit more of the, I guess, stronger mix of yellows back into it. And because of that, of course, then the yellow started taking over and spreading out a bit too much. So I've ended up with too much paint that was just mixing all together on the paper. And I've decided to just take off some excess with my paintbrush and wipe it down, and then dry the whole lot to come back at it with another layer. So to do another layer and to avoid having harsh edges, you need to wet the whole thing again gently with a wet paintbrush and just clean water, and then you just start adding another layer of colors that you want on the paper. You can either just add the colors that you think you're losing and just make those adjustments, or you can just intensify everything and just go over the whole painting with another layer of those colors that you want on it. So in my case, I'm just adding a bit of everything again. I'm adding a bit of yellows in that area and just letting it spread out a little bit more, just to create depth and add a bit more variation to it. And I've also, of course, added a bit more green and a bit more blue in the middle. I've also decided that I wanted a bit more stronger reds, so not kind of orange, but more really bright reds and purples back into it. So I'm just adding more of those colors, keeping in mind that I'm also going to add really dark colors again, and they will do what they did last time. They will spread out and try to take over, which means they will cover up a lot of that area and hopefully give me the look that I'm looking for. So here you can see how the paint is sort of gently moving around and the darks are sort of doing their thing and trying to take over, but because I don't have quite as much paint on the paper as I did last time, they are a little bit slower at spreading out. Of course, they're still spreading out, and you can see how slowly it's starting to sort of go over the lighter colors as well, and that's where I'm grabbing my brush and just removing some excess and trying to guide my paint in the direction where I want it to go, just making like a few squiggly lines and waves and things like that, and just trying to lighten up some of the area to control where my dark paint is going. And as I'm playing around here, trying to guide the color in the direction where it wants to go and prevent certain things from mixing too much, I'm sort of going backwards and forwards, adding colors here and there. I've grabbed some zinc white, which is the white watercolor paint. So it's not the gouache, it's not quite as thick, it's still watercolor, but it just lightened up some of those areas where I kind of wanted it to look like it was shining through. So you can see I've dried it again, and it's gotten a little bit lighter, so I could have probably gone in with another layer of really dark color and added that, but I just decided that my experiment was getting a little bit boring and I wanted to move on to the next painting, so I thought I would add some stars and call this one done. And I wanted to still put this one up to show you that I guess the things that you can go through and the difference that thinner paper makes as well, just so that you can see the difference and so that you can learn from it as well. and some of the things that I find that I would probably do differently next time. Like for example, I probably wouldn't be doing as many large splatters as you will see me do in a minute. I could have probably stopped at this point, but I've gone a bit overboard with it, and that's fine. I can still use it on a greeting card or something like that, and I'm sure it will turn out really great. So this is probably the point where it's gone a little bit too far with the white paint, probably because I've also used a larger paintbrush. The smaller one just wasn't giving me enough splatters that I wanted, but the larger one seems to have overdone it a little bit. So that's fine, and I can just move some of this around a little bit and make it look like a fading star or like a movement in that star. So overall, it didn't turn out too bad, but I've certainly learned a few things as well, and hopefully you have too. If you've got any questions, leave me a comment, or I will see you in the next video. Bye!